Hello, everyone. This is the Inner Voice Show, part of the Evolving Mind series in the Togetherness media. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist and the founder of the Awareness Integration Theory. This is a show about what matters most in our life, our minds, our thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. In this show, I will share the tip of the week about the process of love and loss. And I will share with you how to stop an unwanted habitual behavior in the Ask Me segment. I will bring you the latest research about people who are grieving a major loss, such as the death of a spouse or a child, use different coping mechanisms to carry on with their lives. They attempt to avoid subconsciously thinking about their loss. My guest today is Christy Huxstan. She is the author of Be You, Only Better, Real Life Self-Care for Young Adults and Everyone Else, and 2 other books. A certified grief recovery specialist and a grief and loss facilitator for addicts in recovery. She's also the host of the Grief Girl podcast. She's amazing. I hope that you enjoy her conversation and her story and her life story. But first, here's the tip of the week. This is Dr. Foojan Zeine, and this is the tip of the week. I was talking to my colleagues and clients and friends about love and loss, and it brought up a lot of interesting conversation that I want to share with you. I've experienced love and loss as the 2 sides of the same coin that moves along on a parallel process. Love in relationships comes along with a sense of attachment, which in turn has to face the possibility of loss at every moment. In a healthy relationship, one moves from one phase of the relationship to another. Each transition takes letting go of the last phase of the relationship, which feels like a loss. Letting go of singlehood toward gaining couplehood. The loss of honeymoon stage as one moves toward the next stage, could be even power struggle stage, or the loss of loverhood era to a parenthood era. Letting go of being needed as a parent when children grow up, or all the different ways that one goes through the natural transition of life and experience love and loss. When we lose someone that we love, whether it's due to divorce, death, migration, or phase of life issues, we go through a deep grief. Each one of us goes through this type of a process of grief in our own unique way, depending on the style of our own attachment. Some get caught in denying and refusing to experience loss by acting as if nothing happened. For example, holding on to clothes or the room as it exactly was when the person left, whether they died or the children went to school. Just keep it exactly the way it was, as if at any moment we walk into that room and they're still there. Some fight the loss and get angry at the person for leaving or dying, or the doctors for letting this happen, or for somebody's friend or mother, or somebody who took our lover away. Some bargain with many what ifs and hope to find the right scenario for the loss to go away and wake up from this bad dream to find the person again. Some go into despair and hopelessness and loss of their own identity. Some question the notion and the meaning of love and life while they face loss. I've noticed that as one reaches the sadness of compassion for the self, healing happens. The love that was geared toward being fulfilled from the outside comes from the inside toward the self. Completion with the relationship and the person also helps. Looking at what we learned from the relationship helps us with the completion and therefore letting go. Acceptance of loss as a natural part of life, as a natural growth of human beings, and as a natural phase of relationships will allow us to pass through these processes with grace. Allowing ourselves to accept loss as a natural ongoing phase will help us not get stuck in the denial or try to fight it. So, as we anticipate loss, we can also engage fully in relationships and life when it's present fully in front of us. Some people, due to their original negative experiences of anxious attachment with their people, mother and father, and their caregiver, experiencing extreme loss as a trauma when they were a child, or the pain of losing a loved one. And they generalize this experience and live with constant fear and pain of loss, as if they've just closed their heart and they're not going to go into any relationship, or when they do, always standing there waiting for the other shoe to drop because they're going to face loss. So they face loss every minute. So reparenting the self, healing our childhood traumas will help us unite our different parts and become whole. We can then cherish the feeling of love and experience in fully when it's present, and grieve it appropriately when it's lost, versus living in the loss every day. An expectation of the experience of love as a constant matter is kind of an illusion. Loss will be there no matter what. But generating love consistently, regardless of the loss for yourself, regardless of the loss for yourself and others, will create full enjoyment and will pull you through when you have to go through the loss. For more ways in healing yourself through the process, go to Life Reset, the awareness integration path to the life you want, and allow yourself to learn how to regenerate love and how to go beyond loss, through loss, and beyond loss, and keep living in the love that you have and the shine that you have. It's Dr. Foojan here, and in the Ask Me segment, thank you so much for sending your questions to me via Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. The last question that I have from you was, how do I let go of unwanted behavior or disruptive behavior, some bad habit that I have? Um, well, we could look at some of these bad habits could be under the name of addiction, for example, smoking cigarette or using alcohol or drugs. Or it could be just, bad habits of eating or not taking care of yourself, or any of those that you could imagine. Habits usually form because we're doing a behavior continuously. And obviously, that behavior in some form started giving us some pleasure. So it had a function in our life. That's why we chose it, whether the function was creating comfort or joy or happiness, or alleviated some of the uncomfortableness, or took away the emotions we didn't want, or created adrenaline for us when you were doing it, or definitely had a function. So as we're going through this conversation, please pick up a habit that you don't like and see, when did it start and what was the point for it when it started? What were you gaining out of starting that habit? And what happened that you decided to do it over and over and over again? Because when it's a habit, that means it is continuous. And how do we know that it's bad or that it's destructive when we no longer want it? Because when we are gaining some pleasure or comfort or the function, side by side, it seems like now we're getting consequences. And maybe at the beginning, the consequences were not as apparent to us. So we just saw the benefits and we just continued with the benefits. And somehow, as we're continuing to do that, the consequences are catching up. And therefore, we need to stop, because now apparently the consequences are higher than the amount of pleasure that is there. So whatever reason we did this for, we might need to find a replacement for it a little bit healthier than what we're doing. So identifying why we're doing what we're doing, what does it fulfill in us, is a very important factor. So begin journaling. One of the things you could do is, every time during the day that you're going to begin doing the habit you don't want, start writing it somewhere. What am I doing this for? What is it fulfilling right now? What is it masking right now? What is it I don't want to feel and I'm doing this? What is it that I'm gaining? So write down all of those for yourself and start monitoring yourself for a while. You'll start getting the answers of, oh, That's why. And it might have a different function at different times. I remember when I was smoking a cigarette, sometimes it was because I wanted to calm myself, sometimes because I wanted energy, sometimes it was a transition between seeing clients and having, another client, sometimes it was a rest, sometimes it was just pleasure, sometimes it was just because it's Monday, pretty much. And it was just a habitual. Like every time I sat in a car, I had to smoke. Every time I had a drink, I had to smoke. Every time I finished my food, I had to smoke. Every time I was talking to a friend, I had to smoke. So it was this really finding out which one of it was just habitual because I had done it so much that it got associated with something, another behavior, or was it because I was dimming of emotion or wanting to produce an emotion? So as you begin writing those down, then you can see what type of replacement I can create for the different areas of my needs that are a little bit more healthier than what I'm doing right now. And then so structure it that way. So in every aspect of it, structure another behavior and associate it and add it to the part so you could get fulfilled with it. There's no way of stopping something if you haven't started something else to replace it. So let's do that. Let's figure out a vision to replace it. Okay. And then you can begin envisioning yourself in a new way of being. Whatever you imagine that it should be, imagine that and see yourself in that light and move toward that and begin practicing that every day at the same time. So new habits will become part of you. And that's where you can shift the habit without making yourself wrong or assigning any negativity to yourself. Thank you for listening. This is the latest research. People who are grieving a major loss, such as the death of a spouse or a child, use different coping mechanisms to carry on with their lives. Psychologists have been able to track different approaches, which can reflect different clinical outcomes. One approach that is not usually successful is avoidant grief, a state in which people suffering from grief show marked, effortful, repeated, and often unsuccessful attempts to stop themselves from thinking about their loss. While researchers have shown that avoidant grievers consciously monitor their external environment in order to avoid reminders of their loss, no one has yet been able to show whether these grievers also monitor their mental state, unconsciously trying to block any thoughts of loss from rising to their conscious state. A new collaborative study between Columbia Engineering and Columbia University Irvine Medical Center, published online in the Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience Journal, demonstrates that avoidant grievers do unconsciously monitor and block the contents of their mind wandering. The researchers used a new approach to track the interactions between the mental processes. A machine learning approach to functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, called neural coding, which establishes a neural pattern or fingerprint that can be used to determine when a given mental process is happening. Findings show that avoidant grief involves attentional control to reduce the likelihood that deceased-related representations reach full conscious awareness. Even though they're not aware of it, avoidant grievers actively control their mental state so that spontaneous thoughts of loss do not enter their consciousness. This kind of tailoring of mind wandering likely exhausts mental energy and leads to time periods when the thoughts actually do break through. It is like an ineffective pop-up blocker that runs in the background of your computer. You might not be aware that it's there, but it slows down the overall operating speed and eventually breaks down and the pop-ups get through. Outside of our consciousness, outside of our conscious awareness, we are constantly editing our own mental experiences to control what does and does not get it. And this process of editing is not always helpful. Researchers suggest that one treatment goal for avoidant grievers may be to relax the conscious and unconscious mental controls that they maintain over their thinking of the loss. Since the control and monitoring happens outside of conscious awareness, this would be challenging to do. Training in mindfulness and acceptance may help some people relax both their conscious and unconscious mental control. We'll be right back.